With that, I will pass things over to Max. And by the way, Max, you asked in the channel, what's our favorite horror movie? And my favorite horror movie is The Ring. So there you go. All
Oh,
right.
I will show. I will actually have the ring on my slides, and
Oh,
I will
okay.
tell
We're
you. I
both
think
safe from the
my
curse
favorite
now.
horror movie, as I share my slides, is a Swedish horror movie, which is called "Let the Right One In." Okay, so let's start. So hi, I'm going to talk about horror movies, a lot of emojis, and making better cybersecurity board games. So you see, I'm from Germany, and I work for a large company there. I work in a IT security department, and I do mostly risk management stuff. So this talk will focus a little bit on the cybersecurity management part of cybersecurity. And as you know, in Germany, we love to play board games. So every year, around 4,000 new board games are released, and there is one place on Earth where you can play them all, and that's Spielmesse Essen. It's in the city of Essen. So if you would like to come to us, to Germany, to play board games in Essen, you would have to go probably by air, which would be the easiest way, and you will land at the Düsseldorf airport, and Düsseldorf is the city where I live. So now, because of board games, you know where I live. So when I was still studying, I think it's called computer sciences in the US. So when I was still studying computer sciences, my professor asked our students if we wanted to play a cybersecurity board game. It was this one, Control-Alt-Hack. And at first, I was really intrigued by that because I like playing board games. I have a little board game club, and pre-pandemic, I think we played every 2 weeks. And there were interesting international people out there who were new in Düsseldorf. I wanted to get new friends and also play board games. So after we played the Control-Alt-Hack board game, white hack hacking for fun and profit is the undertitle. I was not so intrigued anymore because objectively, I think this is a horrible cybersecurity board game. So what do I mean by objectively? You see, board games, they have a theme and they have certain mechanics. I will make an example. So NEMESIS is a board game about you being Marines and scientists, being on a spaceship, and aliens invade your spaceship and want to eat you alive. So the theme of NEMESIS would be horror and sci-fi. And the mechanics could involve maybe chucking dice or playing a card or having your card deck built, so deck building. So one of the mechanics, one of the worst mechanics Control-Alt-Hack uses is known for the name of take that. So take that would involve that I see a fellow player, human, right now trying to win the game. So he's on the winning track or her is on the winning track. And I will play a card to sabotage his moves or her moves, or maybe making a challenge harder for this person. So take that is a sort of, competition over 9,000. And I didn't really like that because I think my work in cybersecurity is really different in the way of competition. So the question becomes is, what do I do? Well, you see, I would have an idea, or I will get a project for my stakeholders, and I would start in the dark. I wouldn't know very much about the topic or the project or what is the end product I have to deliver, and I will make a lot of mistakes. I will back myself into a corner. I would do things inefficiently or bad and making a lot of mistakes. But on the way, as I iterate the project, as I iterate the idea and thinking more about it, looking at Google and looking at Twitter and asking people and talking to hundreds of different to different colleagues or to my friends, I will get a better idea what I'm doing to also delivering a good project. So I will give you an example of that. Let's say the board of directors would ask, would see the colonial pipeline hack, right? And would ask, well, there is ransomware out there. We have to do something, but how do the gangs do it? And what are our current defenses against it? So I would remember what I learned in the university, and as me, you will probably think about some kind of cyber kill chain. So here I show you the MITRE one, cyber attack life cycle, where this is from the perspective of the adversary. So the adversary would start reconning your company, you know, all the other stuff we saw in the topics before mine. They will find a vulnerability, print nightmare or whatever. They would exploit it and then try to control the company and ransomware and so on, right? So this is not, this kind of model is good to talk to your colleagues, but it's not enough to ask to answer questions for a board of directives. So I would go again searching for what is the new model, or what is a better model we can work. And it would be, for example, the MITRE attack matrix, which you see we had, the previous one was this kind of straightforward life cycle, right? And here you have more options, and the attackers could, you know, go in another direction and maybe look more into persistence than the execution or the initial access. So that's good, but as you see on the screenshots, it's maybe, I don't know, 1/10 of the whole model. So that's too big to tell someone. So I would search again and talk again and say, hey, is there a kind of tool where I could still get all the good things from MITRE attack matrix, but also have my organization and all my defenses built in? And there is one. So there is a MITRE attack navigator where I could select different platforms. So for example, here in the screenshot, I selected the one for Azure Active Directory, but you could also go for SaaS or for network or for containers maybe, and look what are the attacks on your Docker and what are your defenses. And then you could play with colors. So this is still a little bit nerdy for a board of directives, but with this information, I can now go to the graphic people, to the graphic people, and ask them and set together to make a visualization and make a story. And I don't need to go to the marketing department. We have graphic people in our IT security department. So we would come up with something like this. And the screenshot I'm showing is from Pentara, which I assume is a security vendor. So with this kind of visualization, I can tell a compelling story. So I can start with external reconning, saying that maybe the adversary is using Log4j and is just going through our WAF, which is web application firewall, which might be something like here, right? And going from it like butter, and then make the exploitation, all the asset discoveries, looking for a backup, for our backups, destroying that, encrypting the data, copying all the data through his command and conquer command and secure servers, and then exfiltrating the data not only of our employees but also of our customer. And then you know what will happen? Double extortion, right? So this is the kind of information we seek. And the most interesting thing is, if you're maybe not studying right now cybersecurity, but you studied, for example, or you right now still studying psychology, or you are into graphic design or game design, we want to employ you and we want you on your team right now, because the better story we can tell, the larger the budget we will get. But also, as you've seen on my improvement chart, we have to iterate, so we need different perspectives to do a good job, right? So the board of directors might now see all the story and say, okay, we understand a little bit how ransomware gangs work, and now we know what are our current defenses. So IT security team, what are you going to do with this information that you presented to us? What our defenses are going to be in the future? So I will iterate again on the project, go to the drawing board, speak to a lot of people, and then find out that MITRE has also has you covered with MITRE Defend, which is right now in beta. But as you can see, there are topics like harden, detect, isolate, and even deceive. And we had deceive today in the Pancakes talk, which was a great talk. So if you see, all the improving part of the thing is really important. So and the kind of improving I told you on a project level, or on the level of my mind, is also a large topic in cybersecurity management, which is baked into ISO 271 and called a PDCI cycle, where you plan, do, check, and act. And you do that a lot, and you will improve and iterate on your project. Now, as I said to you at the start, I'm sometimes in the dark, and maybe sometimes I'm good at visualizing and presenting and doing all the management bullshit, and knowing the words I have to tell someone to get other things, like a little bit business social engineering, let's call it like that. But am I really getting the security of my company up against ransomware and other threats? Sometimes I don't really know. So that's why the check part is really important. So let's drill into the check part. You see, for the check part, there is a model called the 3 lines of defense, with the first, second, and third line. And you will probably start in the first line, but let's start with the explanation at the governing body level. So the governing body might be managers. They might be senior managements. They might be CEOs or the board of directors. On the right, you would see the external assurance providers, which would mean, in Germany, for example, this could also be the state agency, for example, the data protection authorities, who would check on us if we fulfill the data protection laws, which is in Europe GDPR, as you know, because of all the horrible cookies you have to click away. So let's get back to the first, second, and third lines. So the first line would be the service desk. It could be people from SOC, or if you don't have a SOC, it could be your security operation guys and girls. It could be the purchasing department, because someone needs to get all the contract stuff, right? But also, and the most important role, are the cyber witches who administer your Linux servers, right? So this would be the people in the first line. People normally who would have the first level and second level support jobs. Now the second line, this is me, the IT risk management department, the IT security management. It would be the lawyers from corporate, from compliance, the compliance department, and it would be the team from the data protection officer, who is a really important part of any organization in Germany. And also there would be a third line who would try to check on us what we are doing, and we would check on the first line and try to improve in this way an organization. So I would like to give you an example how many meetings I sometimes have. So we were trying to get a contract with American security company, and I was so my job was involved in checking the technical measures of a certain product, which involves a lot of contract and reading and understanding the law part of the contract, but the technical part of the contract. So for this one contract, with the data protection officers, I probably met around 10 to 12 times alone, which might sound inefficient, right? But I need that. And that's because there is a so-called Swiss cheese model. So you know the Swiss cheese, the one with the holes. You see, if you have an adversary who, for example, wants to ransomware a company, he has to find holes in every of your controls or of your measures. So you might think of the first level as firewall, the second level as Windows Defender, as ZM, and so on and so on. But every security measure you are using has holes. And I think in the future we'll hear a talk about defense in depth from a technical perspective on the Swiss cheese model. But I think the most important part in the Swiss cheese model is not the technical part, it's the other parts. So if you would look at this chart, seeing the first one as technical measures, and the second part as organizational measures, and the third part as human, as individual measures. So maybe you see that a lot of attacks are from phishing emails. You will want to talk to the physiology people, right? And figure out if you need a phishing simulation solution, and figure out in which way a phishing simulation solution will really help you instead just fulfilling some kind of KPIs, right? So the important part of that is that I need other people to work with me and to talk to them and to have meetings with them. And that's because probably I'm going to be good at only one of the things. Maybe I'm good at organization, on the organization part of the IT security, because I'm good at, I don't know, bureaucracy bullshit and the whole talking thing and moderating. But I'm not so good at the technical part, or at the contractual part, or the law part, or at the human part. So as you see, this kind of PDCA cycle from ISO 27001, the 3 lines of defense and the Swiss cheese model, they are working together. And as a result, I can strongly improve myself, my team, and the project following these models, meaning so that one of the important things in cybersecurity is not competition, but cooperation. So my first suggestion for a better cybersecurity board game would be cooperation as the main board game mechanic. So this was my first part of the talk. And we are going to the vampires part of the talk, to the second part of the talk. But we are not going to leave Swiss cheese behind right now. We're going to start with a talk on critical IT infrastructure in Germany. You see critical infrastructure in Germany. Wow, where do I begin? Let's say it's full of holes, and sometimes the wall in IT infrastructure is just a large hole. And if that is the case, there's sometimes only the hole, and it's all together probably by tape or duct tape. I will give you a very personal example. So in September 2020, the largest hospital in Düsseldorf was successfully ransomware by a gang. And we think that they made a mistake with Google Translate or some other translators. So means there were foreign adversaries, because they thought they're attacking the university. You see the name, if you translate it with some kind of translation tool, would be University Hospital Düsseldorf. So they thought that this is a university which the doctors and the nurses study, but it was the hospital near the university, because it's this large building, or this large building complex, let's say it like that. So when the gang saw their mistake, they talked with the German police and gave the German police the decryption keys for their ransomware. But it was already too late. So the hospital had to rebuild large parts of its IT infrastructure. And you see, if your IT is ransomware, if your IT is down, you neither have an IT, and you neither have a hospital, which is horrible, because it was September 2020. We had COVID, and I mean, we still have Omicron in Germany, right? But at that time, me and most of my family members were not fully vaccinated. So I think it was the first time in years that I really felt horrified because of that. And this could happen again with most of the German critical infrastructure. And you know, the same might happen with US infrastructure and other infrastructures in the world. So now to something a little less horrifying, that the real threat of ransomware, we will come to the second part of the talk, which is horror movies or horror movie tropes. So you see, we will start 100 years from now in 1922 with a movie called Nosferatu, and I think it's about a really thirsty person. So I'll allow myself to get water. Thank you. So the next one is The Mummy, where an actor Karloff comes to life in 1932. And in 1933, King Kong, which was for a 1933 movie, a kind of scary and horror-y, right? And horrible, which established and made a big influence of some of the TV tropes, which are Scream Queen, but also the damsel in distress trope, which is from King Kong. So in 1935, Karloff, being Karloff, have invented the trope of a slow-moving zombie in The Bride of Frankenstein. in 1947, which was after the war, and it was hard to find a horror movie, I took the freedom to show you Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Mouse, which is probably a funny cartoon for children. In 1960, a movie not for children is Psycho from Hitchcock. And I must say, Hitchcock has inspired a lot of really good horror movie posters. The next one is my favorite. You see, this amazing art is 90% typography. It's the font, right? It's probably just the font. And it's called ptaki, which I assume is Polish for the birds. I mean, this is amazing art, right? You don't need to see the movie to have fear from this poster. I'm really amazed at that. So the next one from 1968 was a controversy in the USA because the hero was also a black man in Night of the Living Dead. And I have to tell you a little joke or a little anecdote, because this movie was the hardest one to get a PG-13 poster. I think I looked through 40 different posters from Night of the Living Dead, and I think this was the only PG-14-ish one. And I think it's amazing, and also have the hero of the story. So in 1974, we have Blood for Dracula, and I especially took the Japanese poster because it has a lot of Japanese culture backed in. You see, in Japan, when you look at the mimic of the face, the eyes are really a really important part. So as you can see here, he's staring so intensively, but also this Andy Warhol design has 4 pictures of him and 4 pictures of her. Such a lovely symmetry. Probably it's a movie about love. Well, we have again Nosferatu, and I'm showing the German version, Phantom der Nacht. So if you can pause on YouTube, you can go back and look at both of Nosferatus, because we started it in 1922, right? And then, and I already showed you NEMESIS. This is a movie from 1986 called Aliens. So NEMESIS, the board game NEMESIS and Aliens are like the big sister and the little sister. So the next one would be for you, dear moderator, it would be Ringu, which is the Japanese version of the ring. And I'm showing you the Japanese version of that, not the American one. So now let's switch to board games. So in 2005, we have Arkham Horror, which has an interesting motto. So it says, the classic game of Lovecraftian adventure. So you see, it's only just horror, just a bit of horror, maybe a little bit of splatter, but it's mostly an adventure. You can live with up to 8 players, ages 12 to adult. Also, in 2014 was a cooperative game, Dead of Winter. It's obviously about zombies. So in this game, there is a certain interesting mechanic of someone who might betray the group. So in this game, you will search for the police station, search for the weapons, search for medicine, and so on and so on. But some players might have goals which do not help the group. And the fun thing, when you playing the game, you will not know if you have a traitor or not. And he might reveal himself at the start, but he might not. So this has this kind of social deduction aspects baked into the game, and also a lot of throwing dice. So the next one is also a horror movie trope, and it's Final Girl from 2021. So the very interesting thing about Final Girl, because I'd say to you, remember the Arkham Horror, play up to 8 players. This one is intended for a solo experience, meaning you don't need friends. You can play this horror movie alone, like Final Girl. Cool. But I think my favorite board game I need to get in Germany, and sadly, because of the logistics crisis, it's not yet here, is Horrified American Monsters. So when on Monday, your next Target is going to open, go there, buy this game, and have a lot of fun with your family and your friends. And I'm really intrigued about that, about this game, because in Europe, we don't have such monsters. I never heard of Chupacabra or Mothman. So I'm really intrigued to playing this game and learning a lot more about American monsters. So now, as you've seen, so what I did, I wanted to give you a certain mood. We will come to the conclusion to the last board game I want to introduce, because I'm interested in making better cybersecurity board games. And the game is called NYCTOPHOBIA, and Nycto stands Latin for the night. So NYCTOPHOBIA is a really unique and interesting game in a way that you will play up to 4 players. And one of them is a game master / murderer, pun intended. And the other one would be the other up to 3 players would be the victims, and they are playing teenagers. So the 3 teenagers, so up to 3 teenagers, would wake up in a dark forest, and this is how the game looks. They would have to find an abandoned police car to get to the radio and to call the police for help. That's their goal, and they have to cooperate with each other, finding the car somewhere on this little board. And the murderer is obviously trying to butcher some of the players, and if he succeeds, he will win the game. Now, on the outside, this game might look a little boring and colorless, but on the inside, it's beautiful and functional, because as the victims, you will not see the board, you have to feel the board. And that's because you're playing blind. You know, you will have this kind of sunglasses, and you will not see anything. So the game master, which is also a murderer, will try to help you feel the board. And you will start somewhere, and you will feel the board, and you will tell your other players that you're thinking that feeling this kind of board, you think that you are in the south direction on the board, and you see this feels like a dead end. So you now think about going to the north or going to the east part, right? And then other players would suggest to you what to do. So I find that really intriguing and interesting. And that's because this is a perfect metaphor for cybersecurity. You see, in cybersecurity, you have an adversary. Maybe it's someone from China. You don't know, and you don't care. Because the gang, or the ransomware gang, is not going to kill you personally, but it's going to have a huge attack on the reputation of your company. It's going to copy and ransomware your customers' data and the data of your colleagues and of all the other employees. And on the other hand, you have tools like ZM, which are probably a needle in a haystack situation. So you're kind of looming in the dark, trying to defend against someone you don't know. Right? So I think this can be turned easily, easily on a conceptual level, into a cybersecurity board game. And bonus parts of this game are 3D printed, meaning that you could modify it with a little 3D print skills. So I think in the next 5 years, I need to learn how to 3D print my own game called probably, I don't know, maybe something like Ransomphobia or something like that. So making a conclusion, my suggestion would be, the second suggestion would be for making a better cybersecurity board game to include being in the dark as a board game mechanic, starting with NYCTOPHOBIA. So thank you for being here, hearing my talk. And now I await pancakes and questions.
Yes, so the first question I see in chat is they're wondering, you mentioned that there's a graphic designer in your cybersecurity team or in cybersecurity teams in general, and they're very curious about what that person does and what their role is.
Yeah, so we have two, so we are a team of around 10 to 11 people, and we have working students. So one of our working students learned web design and graphic design for 15 years, and then he wanted to switch places. So he switched from more of the marketing and graphic design position right now to IT security and to computer sciences. So what he does is, you see, we have to make a lot of guidelines for certain things. The guidelines, for example, for business continuity management, which is a wall of text. And I mean, it's easy to make some kind of icons to tell how things would go if horrible things happen in your company, and then we'll have to do business continuity management. But what he does is reading through all the documents and trying to visualize the document into a one-pager. And that's an important task, because most of the people are not going to read your document, right? They want to understand the whole thing in under 5 minutes. So,
Perfect.
Next question.
Let's see if anybody else has questions. Does anybody else have a question for Max?
I can answer
They're
anything
just talking about
they're
talking about their favorite board games and their favorite
that's
horror
cool. That's
movies
cool.
right
I
now.
think in chat I already asked someone about his favorite tabletop game, which is near board games, right? And I think people maybe remember Dungeons and Dragons and they time at that, right? And maybe remember some Dungeons and Dragons games used in a certain really cool series of an American horror, if you know the series. I mean, with the kind of Espa girl playing in old US.
And I see some shout outs for Betrayal at the House on the Hill.
Yes,
and I see,
that's a good one.
I see shout outs for Zombicide.
Yeah, Zombicide. Yeah, I like that.
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
they're all debating about the genre of aliens too. They're all debating about the genres of Alien and Aliens, and in my opinion, the two movies are different genres, but that you might disagree there.
Yeah, well, you see, this is a cultural thing, because in other cultures, maybe horrible things are, received differently, right? Maybe for a German person, having no toilet paper is crazy thing. So you might make a horror movie about that. And also, movies change, and I think our keynote taught a lot about racism and about norms. So something which was scary in 1920, it's laughable right now. And on the other side, right?
And then, of course, there's the obligatory shout out to Backdoors and Breaches, the cybersecurity tabletop game as well that people are really enjoying. So
yes, there's also Netrunner and many other games I need to play right now.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This was phenomenal, and the discussion was so lively in Slack for this one. Everybody wanted to share their favorite films and their favorite games. Really, really phenomenal. Yeah, I don't see any other questions. So thank you for your time and thank you for being here. We really, really are grateful to you for sharing your knowledge today, especially late in the evening for you.
It's lovely. It's a lovely con, and I think I need some pancakes and then go to sleep, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
right.
so see you around for. I hope there is a PancakesCon
Absolutely.
4 and 5
I hope so
and
too.
so on, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Great
see
to
you.
meet
Bye.
you. Bye bye. All right.